And the United States Department of Defense says it has received the notification from the Philippine government about the termination of the Visiting Forces Agreement. President Duterte insists that the decades-old treaty is over, even if Washington appeals the move. Maricel Halili with the rest of that story.
May regret talaga dahil ako ang naging rason eh. Ako ang lastro.
Senator Ronald Bato Dela Rosa is blaming himself for causing the termination of the Visiting Forces Agreement with the United States. It was the cancellation of Dela Rosa's U.S. visa that prompted President Duterte to push for the scrapping of the decades-old agreement. But Dela Rosa believes the president has other reasons why he's ending it. The lawmaker adds, we might be better off without it.
Mas mabuti na yung Pilipinas na nagkalat-kalat ang patakbo, pero Pilipino nagpapatakbo, pero kaysa yung Pilipinas na maganda ang takbo, pero pinapakialaman ng mga hindi Pilipino.
The Foreign Affairs Department on January 11 confirmed that they have sent a notice of termination of the VFA to the U.S. Embassy. Malacanang said there is no need for the U.S. government's concurrence on the notice, which will automatically take effect 180 days upon receipt. According to Bloomberg, the Pentagon says it has already received a notification from the Philippine government. U.S. Defense Chief Mark Esper believes Duterte is moving in the wrong direction. Esper says it was unfortunate that Duterte pushed through with the revocation of the 22-year-old military pact, touting the long-standing relationship between Manila and Washington. Just shortly before the Philippine government sent the notice to the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Clark Cooper said there will be a strategic meeting between the Philippines and U.S. about the VFA next month.
Of all the engagements, all the freedom of navigation operations, all the exercises, all the joint training, having U.S. military personnel in port, on the ground, on the flight line, does require that we have a mechanism that allows that. That's why the VFA is so important.
But for Malacanang, it's a little too late.
That has been overrun by the fact of sending of the notice of termination.
Despite this, Panelo said the relationship between the two countries continues to be warm. Panelo also said now is the time for the Philippines to rely on its own in terms of national defense. With all these developments, Panelo said the president is no longer open to any appeal from the U.S. to save the VFA, nor will he accept any official invitation to visit America. For News 5, Maricel Halili, we are One News.
Some lawmakers and foreign affairs analysts are up in arms against the termination of the treaty. They say it's not too late for the president to change his mind. Marian Enriquez with a report.
Former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario says canceling the VFA between the Philippines and U.S. might do more harm than good. He explains that a visiting forces agreement is a necessary framework for the Mutual Defense Treaty to flourish. This means the termination of the deal might cut the stream of benefits we're receiving from U.S. troops, including joint training exercises, AFP modernization, and even calamity aid.
The quick U.S. relief response during the Yolanda disaster was made possible by the VFA.
Del Rosario adds that this might set a precedent for the abrogation of other military deals, like the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement and the Mutual Defense Treatment. But Del Rosario's biggest fear about cutting deep ties with the U.S. is that it might actualize the government's pivot to China.
There is, Marianne, a distinct possibility that an abrogation of the VFA would lead to the termination of EDCA, the MDT, and other international agreements, which would further serve to bring the palace even closer to being dominated by Beijing.
Military historian and defense analyst Jose Custodio echoes this, saying the cancellation of the VFA will only benefit the Middle Kingdom.
Tinanggal mo lahat yan, parang ina-empower mo ngayon ng China. No? Siya lang makikinabang, ang China lang makikinabang lang dyan.
Custodio adds that the move might spur discontent among members of the military. He says the VFA termination might even lead to mutiny or coup d'etat.
Kapag nakikita nangingibabaw ang China, magkakaroon ng restiveness niyan. Kita nila kasi, parang yung umaangkin ng teritoryo natin, siya nangingibabaw ngayon. Pwede magkaroon ng coup. Ganon. Or mutinies.
Over in Congress, lawmakers are still urging the president to reconsider his stance, at least until senators have turned in their recommendation. After a careful review of the VFA, Senate President Tito Soto says he respects the chief executive's decision, but also believes that Senate concurrence is needed before any treatment or agreement is revoked. This view is supported by other senators.
Bawat treaty ay dapat dumaan sa Senado at yan ang dahilan kung bakit kinakailangan ng concurrence ng Senado bago ang isang treaty ay maging ganap na treaty. So kung ito ay i-revoke, muli, ito ay aking posisyon bilang senador ng Republika ng Pilipinas, dapat merong concurrence ang Senado.
Soto said some of his colleagues might even ask the Supreme Court to finally decide whether or not the concurrence of the chamber is needed to abrogate treaties like the VFA. The Constitution states that the Senate must ratify any treaty the executive enters into, but is silent on whether the cancellation of such treaties requires the chamber's nod. Senators now have mixed opinions whether they should still continue with reviewing the VFA.
The effectivity of the termination is 6 months or 180 days from the notice. So technically speaking, even na-serve na yung notice, effective pa rin ang VFA. So, and there's really nothing to lose because yung insights na makuha natin sa review of the US VFA, we can use these insights.
There is no sense for us reviewing it because what will we review if the VFA has in fact been terminated? And if the Visiting Forces Agreement is terminated, EDCA or the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement cannot stand alone because the basis of the EDCA, according to the Supreme Court, is the Visiting Forces Agreement. And if the Visiting Forces Agreement is terminated, there is no use, the EDCA cannot be effective.
But Senator Ping Lacson says there is nothing left for them to do but wait out the 180-day countdown before the termination of the treaty becomes final. Still, he laments losing the intelligence sharing arrangement between the U.S. and the Philippines, which he says is beneficial to the country's fight against terrorism and criminality. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.